right? So when you click on pre-populate from and map to, in this drop down, you will see some of the existing variables that we have already, but then you also start seeing these custom string fields as well that are available. So you'll have one, then you'll have all from 1 to 10 to 20, then you have two, then the sequence follows with the first number. So you have one, then every sequence from one, you have two, then all the sequence from two, so on and so forth. Right? So there are about 40, 50 string fields that you will be able to customize. So the point is that having something like custom string field one is not really self-explanatory. So using that custom field names master data, you can rename these particular fields as well. So all you will need to do is download this particular custom field names master data and upload it with the field name, with the code and the name of it. So let me quickly show you how to do that. Um, I have a sample file that I can quickly show you.
And if
And
I
this
want
should,
more, can I add them using this file?
you can't add more custom fields. You can rename the custom fields only using that particular master data custom field names.
Okay.
Okay. Let me zoom in. So now I've just put some samples here. Again, this is just to give you an idea what type of question there should be. This I'll delete this column. This should not be there in your master data. But basically, there are three types of codes that you can write for this. All your yes no questions that you create at a form level. So let's go back to the form. Yeah, for a form, any yes no question is basically your either a multi choice or it could be a Boolean question, right? So if I say add question and if I say a yes no question, that comes under the Boolean question. And you'll see all the Boolean fields stacked to it. So if I click on yes no, right? This is now a yes no type of question, as you can see. And here, if you click on pre-populate from and map to, here you will see all the Boolean fields that are coming up as a drop down for a yes no question. Similarly, for a multi choice radio button question, you will have all your string fields that come up as an option. Okay, here, if you go to pre populate from and map to, you see all your string fields available here. So Boolean fields you will write as custom bool field one, two, three, so on and so forth, depending on the field that you want to rename. You put the name of the field that you want to see in this drop down, and then that's the name that will show up everywhere else that you want to use it, like in process and request as well. And then for your multi-choice radio button type of questions, you put the custom field one, two, three, and so on and so forth. And for multi-select checkbox, which is the third type of question for which you can do this, which is this multi-select checkbox question. So for this one, if I go back to pre-populate from and map to, here also, you will see certain string fields, and then these you can rename with multi custom choices one, two, three, and so on and so forth. Okay. So basically using this master data table, you can rename the fields that you see here.
So how do we get the codes of these custom variables? I think is there a is there a place that we can get it from?
I can just share this file as an example for you to use. It's basically the custom for Boolean, it's BOOL field one, two, and so on. For multi-choice radio, you can use field one, and choices, multi-select checkbox, you can use choices one, two, three, and so on. So there is no like a default template as such. The template that's there in master data, this is basically an empty template. So I can share the one that I have. You can use that as a template to start off with.
Yeah. So meaning in my case, if there is a master data type and that is having a custom variables, right?
Mhm.
Custom master data variable one, two, three, right? Uh, in those cases, what should be the code that I should put? I think
Okay, I can add a variable for custom master data in this file as well. In terms of the exact syntax, I would assume it is custom master data one. I'll get the exact code, I'll add it here, and then I'll share this.
yeah. Yeah, maybe if you can add codes of all the supported custom variables, different types of custom variables. You don't. So then that will be helpful. Maybe if there is a way that it can give us from the system directly, that's ideal because this list can be out of date soon, right? Meaning if there is a new type of question comes in, new variable type has to be added, then this list will be out of date. So if needed, maybe we can raise a request, enhancement request on that. I think if it is not already available, so
It's
we'll work
not.
with the team.
So you
Okay.
can raise that request, but I will definitely see what all options are there. It's not very often that we get a new question type added. I don't know when was there a new question type added last. Been like a year already since I realized that there's a question type. But I can add whatever is there right now, and then if there you
Okay.
can raise the request, yeah, for the updated one, not a problem.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So those are the two master data. Again, something that while designing will definitely come in handy because when you get to processes and when you are in a specific process, and you're looking at adding all of these variables, applying conditions. One is of course you can use the purchase policy matrix which we saw yesterday, but then using all these custom variables also may get tricky when you're just directly reviewing the process and the task itself, right? So here, if you go to custom, you have custom fields and then you'll have all of these names. So these names also will get updated when you update the custom field names master data. Okay.
Okay.
And the other aspect I want to also call out is you will see this will of course not be there in the final master data you upload, but for name, that's the name that you'll see on the UI, and then active you'll be keeping it as true. For example, description is very important. Description is not something that will come up anywhere, but this is for your reference. So at any point in time in the future, I would say that if you're not sure, okay, where is this field coming, right? So you let's assume that this is not there. So let me hide this and assume that custom Boolean field is the name is supplier exists or no. Okay, let's assume that this is the name that you given to the field. And in the description, you should put not just that where this is used, so put the form name. Put the form name where this is used, preferably if you want to put the process name where this is used as well, even the task. All of this is very helpful because next time you come here, even if you see the name here, but if you don't know exactly which form it's used, then this description will definitely help you in terms of knowing where to go exactly to look for it.
But again, this is manual, and if there is a way that Oro can determine the references of these variables and populate in one of the column, right, will be more helpful so that when there is a point of cleaning up things, we may miss, and this form or this master data can be out of date because people don't update it frequently. Maybe the same variable might have been used different places or different ways. So maybe if we can have some way to have that reference linked in the master data in one of the column, that will be more helpful, right?
Yeah, currently it doesn't exist. So that's why the suggestion here in terms of data maintenance and upkeep, but this is something you can add to that tracker as well.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So let's go back now to the master data practice. Were you guys able to practice any more than what we completed yesterday? If you have any questions, if not, we can take the next 15-20 minutes to complete those scenarios and then we will proceed with the forms. So basically, we were here in terms of creating custom master data. So were you able to create it? Any issues you faced? And then we also had the subsequent master data as well. So let's take the next 20 minutes, 20-25 minutes or so, and then we'll complete the practice. And then any questions you have, you can ask. I
Hey,
will
Jose,
reshare.
Josefa, quick suggestion. I see a bunch of new folks join the call today. So would it make sense to continue with the forms, which is a new topic, so that they can relate to it and understand? And we can park the master data practice in the later half. During that time, these people can drop off if because they won't be ready with that. Does that work?
It does work. The only bit I will say is that it will be difficult for the new folks to pick up on certain topics that we will keep referencing back to for master data.
Yeah.
So they would need to still go back to the recording for master data that we covered across day one, day two. But yeah, sure, we can go ahead and continue with forms.
Yeah. Does it work for everyone else on the GS side, Ravi, others?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep. It works, I think. Yeah. So I think, Huzifa, I think the points that I've added for the For the practice, no master data practice, maybe we'll, if you're using the last 20 minutes or something, maybe we'll start highlighting that as well.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's start with forms. Now, in terms of forms, right? Let me go back here. There are two main types of forms that Oro provides. You have the standard form and you have custom forms. Standard forms are forms that are provided by Oro out of the box. These are also, you can think of classifying standard forms also into two types. Some that will help you collect information from either the requester or supplier in some way or form. And then some standard forms are just pure settings and configurations that are there, which will help you design or tweak the behavior of the system. Okay, when we go through some of these standard forms, you'll see how and what I mean by this in terms of the settings and configurations that you can change. And custom forms, as the name suggests, this is something that will be created specifically for you. So when you're creating a custom form, it's something that you'll put in your questions from scratch, create all the information that you need. Again, the forms that you create need to be as dynamic as possible, so you can create all those conditions, all those ifs and else conditions while you're designing the forms. The process variable or the pre-populate from and map to aspect that we just saw, that's also something that you can go ahead and set up when you're creating these questions and forms as well. And then eventually, when we go through some of the remaining building blocks as well, which is processes and requests, you'll see that all these forms that you're creating in the system are eventually going to be put into a process. And that process could be, let's say, for example, for procurement intake, or it could be for supplier onboarding, for example, or any other process like risk assessment for that matter. And then essentially, that process will have its own request, and that request is what the user sees on the front door side. So when you're designing a form, you're designing it from the perspective of one, the requester, the information that the business user needs to fill out when they are going through a particular process flow like intake or supplier onboarding. And secondly, you also need to design forms from the perspective of reviewers, approvers as well. So if it's not just the requester that fills out, say, 5 different forms, but you also need certain times some inputs from the request, from the reviewer or from the approver. In those situations also, you can design specific forms for them. Okay, and we will then see how to sequence those forms across processes and requests when we get there. Right, so two main forms, like I said, standard and custom. Let's start with the standard forms itself. Let me minimize this and let me go to the platform. Okay, let's start with forms. And within that, let's start with standard forms. So you'll see on the top here, there are multiple sub tabs within forms as well. Custom forms and standard forms is what we've discussed so far. All of these remaining tabs also I'll get to in a moment. First, let's start with standard forms. And any questions you have, feel free to go off mute and ask, or you can put them in the chat as well. Either or is fine. And for standard forms, let's start with the first form, which is supplier identification form. Now, supplier identification is one of those classic examples wherein if, let's say, you need to create a process for supplier onboarding. As part of supplier onboarding, what will you need? You need the basic details from a supplier, right? Or your requester to add those basic details like the supplier name, supplier email ID, depending on the country that is selected for which the supplier exists, probably add more information like DUNS number, tax information, etc. So supplier identification is that bare minimum basic form that you can use so that you don't have to create a custom form for it. You can directly use this supplier identification V2 form, and then you can start with that to collect information with your supplier. Now, let's open this form. So you'll notice that the layout of this supply identification standard form is slightly different to what you would have seen for the custom forms that you would have created or what we've seen in the training as well, right? The custom forms have all these questions that you can add here, but in a standard form, you're not able to add any question as such. Basically, what you have are settings and toggles on the right hand side, and based on these, you're able to configure the behavior of these forms. Okay, so that's one thing to keep in mind. You're not adding anything from scratch in a standard form, but rather using all of these toggle settings on the right and even the fields that you have available here. So there are about say good 110, 120 forms, standard forms itself that Oro has. Depending on your use case, depending on the requirement, these are forms that Oro would definitely suggest for you to be able to use. And you'll also see that in each of these forms there are about as many toggles as you see here, right? So again, it's not going to be feasible for me to also explain each and every toggle to you. The idea is I will call out some of the main toggles that we've seen used across multiple customers, but then your own use case may be very unique, very different, in which case there may be a certain toggle that is used for you or suggested by you or from Oro's side as well. Okay, so this is something that definitely Oro will support you with in terms of you conveying the requirement and then we conveying back in terms of any specific toggles that can be used for it. I will try and call out some of the key ones for sure. Right. So now in terms of supplier identification, JavaScript, we already have a specific session set up for this. So forms that are custom forms, there you have JavaScript. You also have it available for standard forms. We'll cover JavaScript specifically in that session itself. Apart from that, for supplier identification, you have enable external directory search. Now, this is one wherein you can go ahead and link to an external directory. So if let's say when I am a requester or a business user, and if I'm going through supplier onboarding, and if I need to search for supplier, if the supplier does not exist in the Oro set of suppliers that you have here on the front door side, it can search for an external directly. And based on that directory, if it exists there, then it can automatically show that supplier as well. So that way, if the supplier is existing there, then you don't need to onboard it, is the logic. Okay. So if you're using that, then fine. Second toggle that you see here is show inactive suppliers. Now, typically you would not want to show inactive suppliers because you don't want users to use inactive suppliers. But for any specific use case, let's say just from the perspective that if it's an inactive supplier, we already know the supplier exists and it's inactive. So we don't want to now create a new request for onboarding an inactive supplier again. That may be one use case wherein you may still want to show inactive suppliers, right? So for those kind of scenarios, you can go ahead and show inactive suppliers, switch this toggle on. Uh, Apart from that, you have toggles such as ordering address enabled, ordering address mandatory. So you can capture ordering address and even make it mandatory while you're onboarding suppliers or adding suppliers in the system. Similar to ordering address, there's another toggle for it, which is purchasing, enable purchasing entity filter and enable purchasing entity default filtering. So what this does is when you're acting as a business user, business users will be tagged to certain purchasing entities, or they may also be tagged to certain company entities. So, if they're tagged to certain, say, company entities or purchasing entities, and based on the company entity or purchasing entity, you want to filter the view of suppliers that they have, then in that case, you can enable either company entity filter or if you want the purchasing entity filter as well. And then when let's say if I go to a request and if I am searching for a supplier as part of that request or tagging a supplier, then by default I will only see suppliers that I am able to access based on the company entity. So then it will show in that particular request itself that hey, this supplier is these are the suppliers that are enabled for that particular company entity. So those are the suppliers that you can tag to for this particular request. Okay, so you have those kind of toggles where you're able to go ahead and enable it in terms of filtration of suppliers that the user sees and is able to tag for a request. Supplier recommendation enabled is something that enables the supplier recommendation that you see when you're going through the Ask Oro AI journey. Allow parent supplier selection. This is for specific scenarios wherein you have parent-child relationship for suppliers, and that can be enabled as well. Supplier is enabled for invoicing. Let me scroll through, see if we have any other settings that I want to call out. Yeah, show supplier logo is also one. So when you're onboarding supplier, you are able to upload a logo or add a logo for that supplier. That logo will show up when you are visiting a supplier profile, and also if that supplier is recommended as part of the Ask Oro AI journey. So you see here, this is a placeholder for that supplier logo. None of these suppliers have a logo. That's why you see this particular placeholder for that image. But if you have a supplier logo, then those logos will start showing up. In this setting here, enable warning for existing suppliers. This is important because if let's say I am a requester creating a request for a supplier wherein I search for the supplier and the supplier already exists and I still am going ahead with selecting that supplier and onboarding it, then the system will throw a warning saying that this supplier already exists. So don't continue going ahead with this particular supplier. Okay. You have supplier tags as well. Supplier tags are again used in multiple ways. One way is that if, let's say, internally you have different sub organizations or sister concerns, and then in those cases, let's say for Goldman Sachs, say organization or sub organization one, you have certain suppliers available, but for Goldman Sachs sub organization two, you don't have those suppliers enabled, or each of these sub organizations have their own suppliers, right? So or there is some overlap between certain suppliers where certain suppliers will be available for sub organization one and two, right? So in those cases you can create a system wherein suppliers have tags, and based on those tags also, they are filtered when a user is using it for a specific request. So it's, think of it like another way of filtering your suppliers as well. You can tag suppliers to multiple company entities through this. Um, have a limitation on minimum or maximum number of suppliers, but for a particular request that's going on, typically set to zero means that there is no minimum or maximum requirement. Depending on the scenario, it'll you can go ahead and actually select the number of suppliers when you're filling out this form. Then supplier tags here, don't see any tags here because this is again something that can be added through master data. Now, these are the main fields, right? The toggles that you see on the top are going to control the behavior of this particular form and certain settings related to supplier. But in this section here, all these fields that you're seeing are basically the fields that will come up for selection when the user has to fill out this particular form. So if let's say you don't need certain fields or you do need certain fields, you can mark them as optional, required, or disabled. Disable means that those fields will be hidden. They will not be shown on the front door side when somebody is filling out this form. So typically you have first name, last name, middle name as optional. You can keep something from here as required if you need the at least the first name and the last name. More importantly, let's say in this case, if you need any sort of website, language, etc., all of this is something that you can mark as optional or required. More importantly, you have email here. Email can be marked as mandatory or required here once you are creating, let's say, an onboarding process, so that when the user is entering the details, bare minimum requirement would be email. So you can mark this as required so that if in the future there is any input that's required from the supplier, you have the supplier contact email so that your emails can be sent to them and they can also log into the supplier portal and then respond for that particular request. So this is how you're able to control the fields that you see here. So typically, if this form didn't exist, what would you need to do? You would need to actually go to forms, create a custom form, and then you would need to add all of the questions that you need. Now, in this case, based on the generally available or applicable fields for a supplier that you would need, just for from an information capturing perspective, those fields are added here, and you simply decide what you need as optional, what you need as a mandatory requirement versus what you don't need at all, which you can disable. Okay. Any questions so far?
So if I want to add more fields or more these things, is there a way to add?
No, so these are standard forms, right? So standard forms, you can't add any additional field. So what you will do is most likely always you will never use standard forms in silos. You will always combine these with some sort of custom form that you create in form section. So you will always use it in a combination. So whatever is not available here, those are things that you will typically use as part of your custom forms and you will layer it with each other.
Okay. Also, if I want to rename the wording of this, I think I have option to rename, no?
Yeah, so basically when you click on an icon, you will be able to rename the labels as well.
And whatever the value that requester is entering in these variables or in these fields, is there
Mhm.
a variable process variables associated to this each of these things where I can read it in other forms?
Not directly, but there are ways or workarounds in which case using JavaScript you can, and the form questionnaire you can achieve that. So that is something that we'll ask Ravi to cover in the JavaScript session.
Ravi Prakash. Okay.
Okay. Right. So that was supplier identification. There are few more forms that are related to supplier onboarding. So if you are designing the form or process for it, this is something that will definitely help. One such form is your payment details V4 form as well. So if you click on this, here you're able to basically capture suppliers, bank details, or payment related information. So you can again sequence this as part of a form that you send to the supplier, and then they can add the payment details, or you can present it to the requester and they can add information that they may have as well. So here again, you'll see multiple toggles like save payment detail to the vendor header. So if I go back and let's say we just open any supplier here, you'll see that this is the vendor header information, right? So if you're able to capture the payment details and if you want to show the details as part of the company information, you also have ERP details here. So as part of the vendor header information, you can go ahead and capture the payment details. Use company entity process variable. This becomes a variable, or company entity becomes again a filter that you're using as part of payment details. Um, Payment mode selection, allow editing payout currency. So payment mode selection is wherein if you add the payment details V4 form as part of the request, supplier can choose which payment method they want to add, whether it is wire transfer, whether it is check, depending on the payment modes that are configured for that particular country for which the supplier is being onboarded. So some of this is of course controlled through master data as well. So just take a quick segue back to master data, and you'll see payment method itself is a master data, and then there is payment method country configuration and country option. So if I open payment methods first, you'll see there are 5 payment methods. You can add more, like there are more payment methods that are supported as well, like online payment, bank transfer, etc. These are the payment methods that you have. And then in payment method country configuration, this is where you're configuring that for a specific country, these codes are country codes. Okay. So if say, for example, I type in US. Now for US, for example, you have ACH and check. For some other countries, for example, you have online and check. Okay. So based on the combination of payment methods that are listed here for domestic or international payment methods that need to be captured, those are the payment methods that the supplier will see when they select the specific country for themselves while filling out the payment details V4 form. Okay. So if you enable it through here, that's the backend working that's also happening. So these settings need to be looked at not just in silos, but of course, there will be certain supporting things that will need to be set up with respect to this. Okay. Allow editing payout currency. So depending on the region that they or the country that they select and the payment modes, they will be able to also select the payout currencies. Certain times customers may need to not just be restricted to one payout currency, but also add multiple payout currencies. So using this allow editing payout currencies, you can do that. So say for example, supplier is being onboarded for US. So they select US as the country. They're selecting a payment mode, but they may have USD as a payment mode for wire transfer, but for check, they may have another payment mode. If that is the scenario, then you can allow editing of payout currencies. And then you can also allow multiple currency selection, and you can also accept multiple payments, in which case they can add multiple payout currencies and payment methods. Okay. Mm, Let me see some of the other settings that I'm going through. That's fine. One important bit that I want to call out is this one. You will see this available in some of the other standard forms as well. like tax information. So here you're seeing attachment file size upload limit. Now by default, Oro doesn't have a limitation on the payment details or the documents that are uploaded during the filling of this form. But the reason why there is a file size upload limit is because if this is integrated with your ERP and your ERP has a file size upload limit or a file upload limit, then in that case you can put in that limit here. This will take values in MBs, and then accordingly based on the MB. So if let's say you put in 10, then any size that is file size that's about 10 MB, the system will not accept it. Zero means that there is no file size upload limit. Similarly, you also have do not show payment methods. So you remember the payment methods master data that we saw. This is the list of all the payment methods that are available. But if, for example, there are specific payment methods that you don't want to show by default, irrespective of that country configuration that we saw, then you can directly select those here, or you can directly select it in a request where this form is being used. Okay, so I'm just going to repeat and reiterate what I said because this is important. Now, if it was a custom form, right, that you build, you can create multiple versions of custom forms because it's up to you, right? As many versions of custom forms that you need to create. But then what about standard forms? Like standard forms is not are not something that you can create multiple versions of. So for that, there is provision that is provided under processes and requests. So if let's say you are using payment details standard form under a specific process, so let's go back to this training demo process. And in this process, let's say you have a specific task that you need the supplier to fill out. I'm just putting it right now as part of a document collection task that I'm going to tag to the suppliers. And as part of this, I'm going to ask them to, go ahead and fill out the payment details form. I don't think I've added it here as input. Let me add it here. Okay. We'll of course discuss these things in detail when we get to process. But yeah, for the timing, assume that for this task, which is going to be tagged to the supplier, I need them to fill out the payment details form. Okay. So when you are assigning them a specific payment details form, you can not only set up certain conditions here, but you're also able to then configure certain settings for those forms. This is one way where you can do this. You can also set, of course, conditional builder here as well. And let me publish this. Let me also show this at a request level. So this is a demo request that we have. Let me add it as an input form first. Okay, I have this input form here. Let's say this is something I'm going to give to the requester as well to fill out. Now notice how you see these settings next to it. So when you click on these settings, you will be able to see the same settings that you saw at the standard form level. Now, whatever you set for this payment details form here within this request, or had you done this for that process, these settings will overwrite whatever you have configured at the standard form level. This is the way in which you can use this form in an isolated way compared to the standard form that you see here. Okay, so you may make certain changes here that you want to be applied at a tenant level. But if let's say at a specific request level or a process level, you want this form to behave differently, you want to change certain settings, then you can make those changes here. This will not override back into the standard form. This will only be applicable to this particular request or that particular process that you change. Okay. Any questions on this?
No, I think this is good. But again, at a global level, when you change or when we update the settings, right? So and at a request level, when you override the settings, so
Hmm,
the global level settings will not be coming into their request level automatically. Which
correct.
what I'm saying is as a sequence of steps, right? So if you look at it, I've used some settings in global level, and now I started creating a request and in that I think I'm using that standard form. So if I'm not overriding anything, yeah, I'll see all the settings that I've done in that at a global level, right? And tomorrow, if I've changed anything at a global level, those settings will just come to a request because I didn't override anything, right?
No. So
Or
everything except the last bit I'll correct slightly. So let's say, for example, this is the payment details V4 form. You are not assume that you are not using this for any process or request. So and you're directly making changes here, that's fine. The moment you start using it in a specific process or request, and then you make changes there, you mentioned that any changes you make there are specific to that process or request. But now, let's say you start using it in a process, but if now you come back to the standard form, okay, and you make certain changes, then also those changes don't flow back into process or request.
although I didn't override it at a request level.
Correct. There is, so once you start using it in a process or request, then that form is basically decoupled from this tenant level form.
Okay.
So
So if
then
I have to
the
push them,
best practice, sorry,
yeah,
go ahead.
good. Now, if I have to push those changes from a global level to the request levels, then what is the process?
Yeah, so then you directly make changes in the request level or the process level form itself. You don't make changes in the standard form at all.
Okay. So meaning if I have multiple forms or multiple requests where I have used the same thing,
Correct.
then I have to do the changes in all the places. Although I didn't override anything at a form level,
If you
at
didn't
request level.
override, then why would you change it?
No, consider I've used this in the request level. I didn't
Correct.
override. I just as it is used it. No overrides at the request level. And
Correct.
now coming back to the global standard form level and then just did some changes to the form. These changes will automatically go to the request, or
No.
will just take the point in time configuration of that particular standard form. And then
Correct.
if any changes to go to that request, you have to update at the form request level, but not the global level.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Okay, so maybe if there is option to get the global level change or settings to the request level, maybe it can be a one click, one button, or maybe one option or something, so that I don't have to remember and go back and forth and see what I did at a global level and then change it here or something like that. So maybe if there is something available, so it will be very easy. But otherwise, it can be very manual. Try to.
This is intentionally by design that it is not there. So the reason, so in that case, let's say tomorrow, if you need to make, you've added this payment details form in a process and request, typically you wouldn't have multiple processes or workflows where you use the same form. Like payment details is something that you may use, let's say, as part of supplier onboarding. And if that's a sub process, you can use the same sub process in your intake flow as well, where you also do supplier onboarding, right? So typically, if your design is done right, you will only have that form available in one place. But assume that you have used that same form in two places. Even then, you don't update the standard form here. You directly update it at a request level, so that you're not, there is no button here, because your intention itself is to now update it specifically for that process or request and not in the global form.
Okay, so the recommendation is not to do it at a global level, do it at a request level.
Yeah, for these
And
forms
then
like payment details and yeah, correct. Yes.
okay. So the standard forms, whenever we use it at a request level, it will take the point in time configurations, and afterward, any changes we should be doing at a request level. Just
Correct.
to summarize.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay,
correct.
makes sense.
Okay, cool. There will be more standard forms, like certain forms that have nothing to do with you using them in a process or request. We'll of course go through them. Like I said, right, there are certain forms that are just pure settings or pure configurations. Those you're not going to use anyway in a request or a process. So this whole thing that we just discussed doesn't apply to that, because you're not using
Yeah.
those forms in process or request. Yeah, cool.
Is there
Okay,
a
so
differentiation tag or something that we can see for this kind of a forms versus the other kind of a forms?
no, they're all listed under standard forms itself. No bifurcation like how you have in master data, nothing like that in here. Just that all of them are listed as standard forms.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Um, just some of the fields that you also have here. For example, like now if it's a payment details form, you're capturing bank details, so you can have bank name, swift code. Again, depending on the country, like for example IBAN, for example, depending on the country that's selected, IBAN will automatically be enabled or disabled. If by default you need to, of course, enable IBAN, but if not, then in that case, if it's disabled, then in that case you'll have to enable it. But then whether IBAN shows up or not is also based on the country configuration for it, just like how you had it for the payment methods, right? And then similarly, you also have something called as bank proof document, supporting document. Bank proof document is an important one because if let's say I am a supplier and I'm adding payment details and I have a bank proof document in terms of let's say letter from the supplier bank, a cancelled check, things like that, then if you provide this field as available, it can be optional, that's fine. Then the supplier can upload the bank proof document and the system will automatically through OCR extraction extract details from that document and then tag it automatically to these fields as well. So if it has a Swift code, if it has IBAN, if it has account number, bank holder holder's name, all of those details will automatically populate in these fields that you've enabled. So this is again an important one that you want to keep in mind, keep an eye out for. And supporting document is for any additional documents that they can fill out at the time of uploading the payment details. So if you want, you can have those supporting documents also enabled. Okay, let me go back to standard forms. And some of the other forms that you also have would be company information V4. This is that tax information form that I mentioned earlier. This is where you're able to then go ahead and, again, a lot of toggles that you'll see here for how this form should behave. But like one important one, disallow expired W8 or W9 form. So let's first go through the fields here. So in the tax information form, you'll see that the supplier is able to add more details like whether they are an MSME or not. They will get an option to upload their tax details, tax forms, additional W8, W9 form as well, if whether tax 1099 is required or not, etc. So there are a lot of fields here that you can customize depending on what is needed as part of your tax information. Okay. And they will get a placeholder to upload your W8, W9 forms as well, or whatever, country specific tax information document is needed. And then for that also, you can upload or add a file size upload limit here based on the number of MBs that you want to restrict per your ERP. And then if you scroll up, you'll see,
One question on those fields. No, is there a option to have a visibility condition configured so that if my country is this, then these questions are valid. If my country is not this, then
yeah,
those cases.
that, yeah, that's part of the master data itself.
What do you mean? Can you elaborate more on that?
So depending on the fields, right? So let's say if I go back to master data, you will have all those documents, like what bank proof documents do you need. So like for example, this bank proof document, all of these are the name of different documents that come up. Similarly here you can then set it up based on which specific country should which bank proof document be needed. So bank details country configuration, bank proof country configurations. If I open this, you'll see now for a specific country code, these are the bank proof documents that can be coming up as a drop down option. Similarly, if you go to payment method, even for payment method, you will see these options available. So for which specific country should which specific payment options come through. So all of this is part of your master data configuration that you can set it up here. And then at a form level, you're basically enabling or disabling those fields.
But yeah, so I think this is helpful. I think at a farm level, the questions that we are, the fields that we are having, no? Is there a visibility that we can add as a dynamic visibility? Meaning on this.
That dynamic, no. So at a standard form level, you're either enabling it, disabling it. Or when I say enabling it, you either make it mandatory or not, or disabling it. The visibilities is something that is controlled through master data.
Okay, visibility as well, is it?
The Sorry, the conditional applicability. That was your
Using
question,
those
right?
country specific, is it? So for this
Yeah.
country, these
Yes.
use.
Correct. Correct.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. All right, so that is company information V4. Just few more settings that I'll call out here as well. One is OCR V2. So again, OCR V2 is available for tax information. Same for payment details as well, but for payment details is in another form, so I'll call that out. There is OCR V2 is basically the you're asking the system to perform OCR extraction. Based on that, if they upload a supporting document like say WWN form, then the system is able to extract information from it. And then for these fields, their system is able to automatically map it as well,
Okay.
right? Um, there are more forms like supplier contacts V2 form. This is one that you can use for capturing additional contacts for your suppliers. So when you're onboarding a supplier, you can share this form also with them. This is a form wherein they'll be able to go ahead and add additional contacts that they have. They can have primary contacts, but in addition to that, if there are additional contact types that they would want to add, you can add those contacts. So this supplier contacts also is another master data. So you see these mandatory roles. These mandatory roles are coming from a master data called as supplier contact master data. Let me go to master data here. So you see supplier contact role. In supplier contact role, you will have all of these contact types. You can customize this however you want. Once you customize the contacts, they will come up in this drop down here under mandatory roles. Now you can decide that when a supplier is being onboarded, if you specifically need a particular role to be added. So if by default, when a supplier is being onboarded, you will have a primary contact, right? But if let's say in addition to the primary contact, you even need, let's say, the accounts receivable contact, or you need the finance head, whatever that role is. These roles, as I said, can be customized from this contact role. Then you can have those mandatory roles listed here. And then if you have optional roles, you can list them here as well. Okay. This is again one way of configuring it. The other way of configuring it is, let me go to contact type. No, not here. No, there is another master data that I will check and share with you,
Do you want to
which
check in
will,
templates?
sorry.
Do you want to check in templates? Maybe if it is not good.
Um, no, those are already there. Supplier contact type is also there. Let me see if contact type is not here. Yeah, it's there. Think it's just that it's not populated, but I'll check if this is the exact master data. So basically, what I'm trying to get at is that the one way, which is the easier way, is what I mentioned. So if, say, for example, you have all these different contact types that you added through the master data that we saw, you can choose what's mandatory and what's optional. But if you want to do this again, specifically for, at a country level, then you can go ahead and map it at a country level as well. That, okay, for this particular country, these are the contact types that are mandatory or not. So you can go ahead and do that as well. If you are setting it up in terms of mandatory and optional roles from here, the only setting that you need to then switch on is this, which is override form config with master data for roles. If you switch this on, then the system will automatically take this into consideration, and it will ignore the roles that you set up at a or the mandatory roles and the optional roles that you set up at a master data level. That's the master data that I was looking for, but I'll check if it's directly in that same contact role itself through an additional column or not. That I can confirm. But yeah, for all intents and purposes, you can definitely set it up from here. And then what details you need for that particular supplier contact, that you can again go through these fields, see what's needed, and then accordingly either make it optional, required, or disabled based on your requirements.
Mhm.
Okay. One more standard form that I'll go through. Again, an important one is account assignment. This is part of your intake as well. Now, if let's say, as part of intake, you have line items. Part of the line items, you have all these values that all these items that are added, and you need to go ahead and tag either the accounting information, the delivery information. So account assignment standard form is something that will definitely be used here, wherein you're able to then go ahead and provide that form to the end user. You're able to use this to capture delivery information, ship to location, etc. Cost center tagging, GL account tagging, all of that can be used through account assignment. Okay, so this is typically a form that you'll have as part of your intake. You'll see here also you have questions for ship to, and whether you're using company entity or material group for account filtering as well. So just like how you had the purchasing entity or company entity as a filter for suppliers, here also you can have company entity as a filter for account filtering. So basically what it will do is look at the user's profile that's raising the request, and based on that it will filter based on that it can filter categories. It can also filter cost center, GL account information as well. And on top of that, if you need to enable any sort of AI suggestions for GL account or material group selections, you can enable it. It will basically give a small ask or AI icon where the user will be able to go ahead and converse with AI and then automatically get a suggestion for that particular GL account or material group. Just going through some of the other fields here. In decimal precision for split percentage is also good. Something that if you don't have a limitation on decimal precision split, you can keep it as -1, indicates that there is no limitation. There is a
Sometimes
delivered
we have a 0 and sometimes -1. No, so how do we know if some places we have to put -1 and 0 or both are same?
Zero is also accepted. Yeah, zero is also accepted. In this case, for decimal precision, it's the only place where zero will not be accepted because it will take it as zero as the decimal precision. But typically, zero or -1 should both work. Like for
Okay.
example, even for like the file size upload limit, right? Even if you put -1 should be fine.
Okay. So meaning -1, 0, it's no limit. And
Correct.
some these kind of cases, I think 0 is something 0 decimal.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. These are the fields that you would see. I think when you start adding these forms to a specific process and a request that you build for, let's say, intake, that's when you'll be able to see the visual aspect of things in terms of how these forms would come up on the interface, how the user will actually need to fill this out as well. When we're going through, say, process and request, I'll see if I can try and add some of these forms, build a new process and request from scratch, so kind of see how these forms look like, specifically like an account assignment form. Yeah.
Quick question. So there was like a AI feature which you mentioned above topic. So
Yeah.
when we say enable AI suggestion for GL account, so this applies to all of the form. I'm just trying to think how will this work generally? Like, is it like applied to all the fields that we add in the form, or is it just for specific entities or something like that? So,
Hmm. So basically, this will be specifically for GL account selection. So it will be a small AI bubble or a icon that you get basically that will be just for that field in this account assignment form. So it's not applicable to the entire form. It's
okay.
only applicable to, say, if you enabled it for GL account, then just under that GL account field selection. So if I scroll down,
When you say GL account master data selection, right?
correct, yes.
Okay,
So
okay.
yeah, so it will help the user go ahead and pick that specific GL account based on their inputs from what they've selected and based on the GL account master data that you have. So based on that, it will help the user pick the right GL account.
Understood. Okay, thanks.
Mhm. No problem. Okay, so that's account assignment, decimal precision we've covered. Deliver to is basically a free text field. Again, the only reason to put a limiter here would be if there's a ERP restriction. If not, you can put, give more character limitation here. There's no upper end to it. Of course, you can have more. And this is where the user can put like a warehouse manager, etc., to where the goods or services will need to be delivered or executed, right? that you can add. And then from here, these are the fields that you can have for that account assignment form in terms of need by date, start date, end date, if it's service, delivery instructions, all of that is something that you can customize from here. Any questions before I move on?
No.
Let's go back to forms. So again, a lot of these forms that we just spoke about, all of these are more or less focused on you using them as part of a workflow like supplier onboarding or account assignment being something that you use as part of intake as well. Now I'll cover two more forms. That's tenant options configuration and tenant UI configuration. Tenant options configuration is a pure settings specific form. Again, here you will see there are a lot of configurations itself. If you scroll through this, there aren't any fields that you're selecting. So this is not a form that you'll use for any sort of input that you need from the requester or the supplier and such. This is a purely settings driven form that we have. And here, like, there are supporting settings as well as toggles that you can use. We spoke about budget approval and budget approval matrix in master data to ensure that the system follows budget approver and budget approval matrix and does not follow managerial reporting structure for approvals. You need to have this toggle switched on. Okay. Once you have this toggle switched on, then the system will follow budget approval matrix and not follow, let's say, a managerial reporting structure, which is basically picking up, let's say, from a user profile in terms of whoever the manager is, things like that. So this is mandatory check which you need to enable if you're using budget approval and budget approval matrix. Apart from that, you have these toggles where you can send notifications when the task starts, when it completes. These are notifications again sent to the requester for when the task has started. So task start means what? Let's say I'm a requester. I created a request. I submitted it. Now the request has been sent for procurement review, for example. So when the procurement reviewer accesses that request, so if you would have seen on a request level, let's say this request here, you'll see this button basically start originally, right? When the requester first accesses this. So when they click on the start button, which is now continue because I would have already started it at some time in the future, in the past. So that's why you see continue, but that button will be start. So the first time the user clicks on start, that's when the requester would get notified. Similarly, you can have it for when they complete it. So we've seen customers switch it on for when the task completes so that they get notified, the requesters get notified. If you want it when the task is approved, again, you can switch this on as well. Some of these are for external notifications. So this will be more in line with what your integrations are for and with what's happening in your ERP versus what you want to notify here as well. Something that can be discussed during the integration sessions. Apart from that, let me just scroll through. This is auto enabled already, show doc collection task name. So depending on when you're setting up, let's say a process, and in your process, but I think I had a process somewhere. Let's go back to process. Yeah. So if let's say you are adding a doc collection task and you're giving a task name here, then for doc collection task, it will show the task name and not the fact that it's a document collection task. This is again more in line with what should be shown for end users and for suppliers as well. So you can rename it accordingly, the doc collection task name. This is for visibility of tasks across all work streams. There are again a huge number of settings available here. I'm just going through these and calling out some of the key ones. Some of the API integration failures, again, we can discuss as part of troubleshooting and integration training. Yeah, this is for document upload, priority, etc. Many of these settings will be controlled by Oro or set up by Oro when we are doing the implementation. And in your case, if you're sharing use cases, then definitely. This is one I will call out. So for payment details V4 form that we spoke about, you can enable the OCR extraction from here. Okay, like how you had it for tax information, payment details V4 form also. If you want them to upload the bank proof document and that to be extracted, then you can switch this toggle on and the system will perform OCR extraction and then automatically map details like account number, IBAN, etc. So this is an important toggle again to switch on. This is also useful. Enable multilingual emails for internal users. So Oro does support certain languages out of the box, and if your users are available across globally or across different geographies, based on the country and language that they've selected. So if I go to language here, if I have selected my preferred language to be Chinese or German, for example, then the emails that I'll receive will be in those specific languages. These are languages that Oro supports out of the box, right? So I can click on a specific language, set it as per my profile language as well, preferred language in my profile, and then I will receive emails as per those particular languages that I've selected or language. So you can switch this on if you want it to be done for internal users. By default, that is enabled for supplier contact. So when you're onboarding a supplier contact and if you selected their country and their language, by default they will receive the email as per their language. So those are translations that are automatically available for those standard email templates. Okay. Scrolling through all of these.
So what is this default oil prefix something? IL
I am not sure what this does. There is another one which is for prefix.
prefix for
Let me
request, huh?
Yeah, there is one for prefix which I will show you, which is request ID prefix. Okay, so this is something that gets tagged here. You'll see PHID. This
Yeah.
PHID comes from this, the request ID prefix. So you can set it up as per the custom prefix that you want.
Yeah, this is something we are using for Facebook, but again, other one, since I don't know, it just says IL. So I'm trying to see where it is used and then how we can use it if it is something.
I can check. I can check. Not a problem. I'll make a note of this. Okay. Um, these are more specific default reminders for contracts if you're using that. Um,
So there is a page expiration or maybe some minutes that we can set up, no? Uh,
Correct. It's going to come, I
so
think, further down.
yeah, so I see it is just
This
working
one.
for only app, but not the admin section. Is that right understanding, or maybe it's something that we still need to enable for admin section?
Um, I I'm not sure if I'll be able to tell you because when we log in through the admin side here, right, like this one, you see, I get automatically logged out on the admin side as well, irrespective. So I think there's a different timeout for Oro personnel versus you. So tell me by experience, if you've been on the admin side, did you get logged out
Yeah.
automatically on the admin side? You did, right?
Yeah, app side, I think it's all good, and it takes it this many minutes to log out. But again, admin side, it's frequently logging out, and not sure this is linked to admin section. If there is another place where we can put for admin separately, then let us know. We can try to put that.
Sure. Cool, cool. Will do. Yep. Okay, where was I? Let me go back. One thing I want to call out was filters as well.
Filters in the app for the request, no?
Correct. So there is this toggle called as list of custom fields that can be used for filter. So this is basically talking about when you go to requests, when you go to filter, here you can add custom filters. Okay. So those custom filters will need to be basically field names that are custom field names from your forms that you create. So if I go to a form, and we pick a specific field. Let's not pick something that's obvious like category. Let's say something
Maybe
like
let's say the risk, right? Risk. If we scroll to the bottom of somewhere, I think there is a risk is something. Scroll down one more. Yeah, what is a risk assessment?
what
So
is
it
risk?
says
Okay.
it's a low or whatever, some.
Okay. So this field name here is risk assess. One thing
Mhm.
that is needed is you will need to send this to analytics. So you need to have a field name for it and you need to send this to analytics for that particular
Mm.
field. when we publish this against the test form that I'm publishing at this point, and you go back here, you can put that risk assess field name here. Okay. And you can have multiple fields. You can just use semicolon as the separator as indicated here. For now, let's say we publish this.
Don't we need to refer the farm name also? So this farm dot this
No,
field. If between maybe in a particular request there are multiple forms with the same field name, will there not
you
be a
should
conflict?
you should never do that by default. So if you're having multiple field names, then that's a disaster waiting to happen, because then when you're say integrating via API, system will not know which field you're referring to. So even integration will suffer, even reporting will suffer. So field name, so I'll call it out again when we get to custom forms, but whenever you're defining a field name, it should always be a unique field name across. Never reuse a field name.
Okay,
So I
across
think
forms.
Yes, across forms.
so. Is
Okay.
there a naming convention recommended in such a case where there is a risk custom field like risk assess?
Hmm.
There like as naming convention best practice follow.
Yeah, it'll basically be you keep it at lowercase. You keep it at lowercase or camel casing depending on the name. So if it's a two-word name that you want to give, you can follow camel casing. That should be fine without any spaces and without underscore as well.
Yeah, that I understand. But in the case that let's say there are two forms and the both the forms require a similar field name, like risk assess. So would you suggest like we have a form name underscore the name of the field as a best practice kind of thing to make sure that
Yeah, yeah,
okay.
yeah, you can do that. Yeah, wherein you're indicating in short like the form name as well.
Hmm.
And you'll of course have more context depending on an actual scenario. So yeah, you can use that context when you're giving the name of that field.
Okay, understood.
Is there a character limit, by the way, to these names?
To the field name?
Yeah.
No, there isn't a character limit, but I'm not sure if from an integration standpoint there may be a limitation. So that you will need to keep in mind when you're integrating. Like if the ERP would have a limitation. Let me go back to the form. I don't see the field come up there. So I'm just going to go back and check if the form was published.
And do we need to create a new request to get this available? Because we
No,
just
no, it should come up. Let me just pick one here, which is global ID. This is already sent to analytics and has a field name, because the other one, I don't know if it's taking time or it's because it's a text area. So I'll check that, but I'm just going to go back to tenant options and let's go back to filter. Okay. Let's say we keep this, add global ID. Okay. Let me
this
refresh
filter
now.
is more specific to the particular request, or it's overall for all the requests. Meaning request in the sense not the raised request, but different requests, different types of requests. Meaning currently we just have a procurement request and help request. Maybe in
Hmm.
a production case and maybe in the real case, there can be a 10 requests, 10 different types of requests. If you configure at a tenant level, so this field filtering will be available for all the requests, whether that is relevant for that request type or not. Is that right?
Yeah, so you're right. It's basically when you put a filter here for global ID, for example, it's going to apply it across all the data that that user has access to in that moment. And that is, of course, across all the requests that they are able to see under
Okay.
request tab. Yeah. So if they are able to see from the 10 request tiles, if they're able to see all 10 request tiles, then it will be a the filtered view across those 10 requests. But of course, if it's not applicable for like nine of out of those 10, that will automatically get eliminated when you apply filters.
Okay. Also, I think in the request, if you look at it, right, this request. So in this request, maybe this may be relevant when we are coming to this app section training. But again, as we are talking about the filter, I think is there a way? I think I went through the some release notes. I think there is some way to display some variable data at the top on the top of a request tile, this tile, right? So how is
Like
it a
on here,
yeah,
on here, right? We'll
right?
come to that when we get to the request builder training, like the request part.
Okay,
That's something that you
yeah,
can set through request. I'll get to that. It's part of our
sure,
agenda.
makes sense.
Okay. All right. So that was the standard form for tenant options. There's a few more things in there that are very important, very relevant. So let me go through that.
The migration one, so the top where we can choose selectively when you migrate.
Which one?
Maybe bottom, the last one, two of that already. If you scroll down.
Oh, to the bottom of this page, you're saying?
No, no, not the page, but again, there is the toggle section.
Okay. 1 second. Here.
Yeah. So this one. So enable pulling only the required configuration changes from another environment as part of the change management is something we had to learn from Praveen. But again, this is something very important configuration that we use this time for selectively pulling some objects from one environment to another environment.
Hmm, fair. This is something, these are certain settings that, yeah, like you said, right, based on the use case, definitely Oro will help and support with. The other aspect would also be that these are not things that you as admins, once let's say something is switched on or switched off, either or, you will not go back and change it. So even as admins, you will not, now that you know about this and you've enabled something like this, you will not go back and switch it off. I would think that's an extreme edge case wherein you would go back and change it. Things like what we saw, like a filter, for example, you progressively as you use the system, you may feel the need that, hey, this is something that should actually be used to as a filter, give the end users a chance to filter based on it. These are certain things that you can then customize going forward as well. So yeah, something to kind of keep in mind.
Sure.
Okay. There's another bit which is important here, which I'll call out, which is help center configurations. Okay. Now, help center configurations is going to help you like, show up those help center config tiles under this question mark under help center. So by default, you see this Oro knowledge base portal and you can click on it and it'll take you there. But if you want to add more content here, you can click on add item, choose, let's say, an icon for this, enter a help tile title. So I can say training materials. So let's say we have these recordings, we go ahead and upload those as well. And then you can say, okay, here, just going to copy this URL. For now, I can say display URL will be access SharePoint resources here. So this is to, okay, and I will submit. Once you submit, on the front door side, if you refresh this page,
I think you have to
and
publish as well.
or did I not? Oh, I just submitted. Thanks. So basically, let's publish and let me refresh. So here we'll now start seeing that second tile, which is based on the UI. Uh, it's coming up as black. That's the UI that is set to dark mode, I believe. Let me go
Yeah.
ahead. Yeah, so it's set to Coco. If I change to light, and I think that should be it. Maybe my cache as well. But basically, you will be able to see under help center the additional tiles that you add. If you click on this, that's the text that you added. The link is of course the link. And when you click on it, it'll route you to your, it could be an internal site within Oro, like an internal request tile. So you can use this to kind of create guidance in terms of where the users can go. Of course, there is buying channel for that, but more or less this should be used for any supporting materials, training materials, guidances, policy documents, etc. that you want to link here, right? Can go to external sites as well.
Yeah, one point on this, right? So currently, this adding this help center icons or the information is something is is at a master data level, the standard master data level. But I feel like this should be at a tenant level because dev can have a different links and QA or other environments. But again, production level, we may need a production specific and links. So if it has to go through the change management and all this, and if at all that we have to add one more link, it has to go through the change management, no? So what are your thoughts on that? I think, is it more relevant to go through a change management, or should it be part of the tenant level setting?
So you're saying whether this should come from a master data rather than doing it at a standard form level?
Either master data, because master data can be uploaded in production directly without change management,
Mhm.
or put this or have this setting at a tenant level settings, the settings tab that we are having, so that it can be managed directly in production because the links can be specific to production. But in this case, if I put some link, it has to go through as a change management from one environment to another environment, right?
Correct. Yeah. So what we've seen customers do is that this is more or less directly configured on their production, not really configured on lower realms. But yeah, if it does need to be configured on lower realms, then yeah, it will need to be pushed through change management to the higher realms.
Yeah, if you look at it, right, I think we in production we will not have access to change any of the forms directly. We'll have only read only admin or maybe some kind of a limited access. So with that, we can't directly change these things, right?
Okay. Okay.
So with that, maybe with the tenant level settings kind of a option, so we can directly change it. But with the other limited access, I am limited to do it with the change management, and that's where I think we need a lot of approvals, and then it'll take time to push to production, and then you understand what I'm saying, right? So that way it's a
Hmm.
lag.
But that will be the case for any change that you need to push, right?
Yeah, those can be configuration change, but this can be just no. So these kind of cases, no testing involves, right? The other cases, testing may be involved.
Yeah, but I think I get your point. Something that we can take a look at, but I think it's more in terms of giving access and probably to specific admins to just change something in the forms level. But yeah, yeah, cool. Okay, this we discussed. Request ID prefix. This is something we discussed as well. One thing I'll check is if we have a separate timeout condition for admins, that I'll check.
But this setting will not apply for the Oro users logging into our realms, right?
Like from the front door perspective.
Or no,
It,
or
for
as a
any,
Oro user, yeah, as a
no,
Oro user, you from a Oro
no,
team, if you're joining from logging into our environments,
yeah,
yeah,
doesn't
it will
doesn't
not be
apply.
applicable.
No, I will
Okay.
still get logged out. I think for Oro, the default logout is 60 minutes or 30 minutes. I'm not sure because keep getting logged out frequently. So I think for any idle timeout that's there on the screen, I will get logged out irrespective of this. Okay, cool. So let's go back to forms. So we've covered, I think, quite a lot of standard forms. I don't think we have time to cover custom forms because I do want to give time back to practice as well. So we can cover standard custom forms tomorrow. I'll just cover one more standard form, which is tenant UI configuration, and then we can break for practice. Yeah. So in terms of tenant UI configuration, here, this is also another, very much a settings oriented form that you have. You will see things like enable you new UI design system, things like that. Not something that you'll come back to make specific changes here. Once you enable the new UI design system, this will, whenever there are certain changes or updates made to the product on the app side, there are many things that will come as part of this new UI design. So if you ask me in terms of what will change as part of new UI design. It's basically whatever you're seeing here, right? There are many things that individual product managers would then actually tweak and tag it as part of new UI design. It's either it's this progress screen that you're seeing, or if let's say I click on activities and whether I'm seeing the activities, there'll be multiple things that will change. So if you've enabled this is not something you'll disable or change. Okay, you're going to now get updates as and when there are new changes as part of the UI design. Um, Again, this all of this is more or less in terms of how you have your design. Yeah, this one, the reason why I didn't go back now, if you have this new UI design, but you also set this toggle on for nav bar in dark theme. That's why you're seeing this nav bar in the dark theme as well. Okay, so it's not controlled at that theme level, rather here. And then enable theme toggle experimental. That theme toggle is the one that we saw in the user profile. Content management is more or less from Oro's perspective to control. There are different ways in which, let's say, you have this something like help center or bulletin that you can control. So content management is something that I'll cover in an upcoming session when we talk more about, say, if we talk about bulletin or how to set it up. But yeah, more or less a one-time setting as well. This is important. Show visual indicator for required fields for standard forms. So by default, if you have this switched on, right, in any standard form like supply identification V2 or payment details, all those mandatory fields or required fields that you've configured at a standard form level, if they are required, then the user, the supplier or the requester will by default see the asterisk mark next to it. That's the visual indicator that you can enable for standard forms. Any field that you marked as required will get that sort of asterisk available. There is one more thing which is enable new RMI design. This I would suggest to switch on, but I think we've for Goldman Sachs disabled the request more information altogether, the message center itself. So enabling this will anyways not have any impact. So typically what I'm referring to is if you are in a specific request, let's close this. You have a message center and a request info button available here, or you could have it available at a task level. So here also you will see a request info button or a messaging button. I assume that that's an intentional choice where the collaboration is turned on. Yes? Ravi, Rahul, can you confirm?
That message center is something disabled, and
Yeah.
you asked something else.
Yeah. So basically, right, at a request level, the reviewer or anyone can actually request more information or collaborate through messaging. I see
Hmm.
that on an admin level, there's a standard form with which you can control that behavior, and message center was
Yeah, we disabled.
disabled. Okay.
Right,
So
we
that's
disabled.
intentionally disabled. Okay, cool. Yeah, so I was just saying that this new RMI basically stands for request more information. So enabling it here will not make any sense because anyways your message center and request more information is something that is disabled. You don't have PO listing, so that's fine. There are
One
toggles
question
now.
on the above, right? I think the standard forms mandatory pay, highlighting the mandatory field with asterisks or something.
Sure.
So is a similar kind of a toggle is available for the standard the custom forms as well, where if some
No,
question is marked as a
unfortunately, no. This is something that we shared with product as a feedback, but no, it's not available.
okay, yeah. So thing is, yeah. So when some question is marked as a mandatory, I think it don't come with this asterisk.
Correct.
Maybe
Yeah,
if this kind
correct.
of things available, then it'll automatic. I think that we can add manually, right? I think asterisk, but again,
Yes,
a lot of times the configuration will change. If it links to that, then that way it will be more dynamic.
correct. Correct. No. Fair point. Fair ask.
Yeah.
This application title, GS Procurement Hub, it's already customized. You can see that's the name that you'll see on the top of my browser as well, which will show up as GS Procurement Hub. So this is something you can use as a custom title. So your dev can have something called as Dev GS Procurement Hub. You can change it on production or let's say at least on Sandbox, etc. Just if you have that admin access and you're logged in on multiple browsers through Sandbox and Dev, then if you're toggling, then this will help if you're using incognito mode or not. If not, this is again standard. You can use across all as well.
Yeah, same point on this as well because this setting is also going via my change management from one environment to another environment. So if I add a dev in the dev, so that will go to QA or maybe testing and sandbox and production also as a dev. So that way we put it as a common for all the environments. But again, if it can be made as a, or if it can be used as a tenant level settings, where we can change it by realm or by environment, then we I think we wanted to use it as a that environment as well in the name. So currently we are not using because of that reason.
Hmm. Okay. You can add this to the
Mm.
tracker because I would assume that you, even if there is a tenant level setting, you would still need to go into that realm to kind of make the change, right? So you can right now also go into that realm, let's say from dev to QA, you can go and manually overwrite it. But yeah, if you are doing the change management, then it will get overwritten again, is what you're saying. So basically, if there
Right.
is a flag which helps you just disconnect it from change management, is what your ask is, right?
It can be toggle here, or it can be moved to a settings tab, the left side settings tab, where everything from there is all tenant level settings. So that
Correct.
way those settings can be managed within the every environment,
Yeah, I
right?
think it's, yeah, you put this in the tracker. That's, I think, best way it can be raised with product and they can see how the best to kind of implement this.
Oh, yeah.
All right, cool. So we will pause here. I will pause again for any questions that we have. I know we've had people join this for the first time, so been a lot of information for you guys as well. Any questions, anything you'd like me to repeat before we start with practice?
Now, as so maybe one follow-up question on the forms is, I think we didn't go through our custom forms. Maybe I can talk about that later as well, or we can discuss more. But at least on the references of the forms, right? I think currently I see usage column, uh,
Correct.
but maybe we can discuss more on that maybe tomorrow when we connect.
Yep. We'll talk about custom forms tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, let me go back to the master data scenario. So, for those of you that were on the call yesterday, I did share this over email with you as well. So, you should have the PDF file. And yeah, take this next 20 minutes to complete this practice. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. And for, is there anyone that's completed the master data practice scenarios? If yes, then I can also share the forms practice scenario as well. Even though we've not completed it, Ravi, I know you've, of course, done a lot of build as well. But yeah, let me know if anyone has completed master data practice, then we can also share some form related practice activities.
I've completed the master data practice points. So maybe if you can share the forms one, I think I'll start with that.
Okay, I can do that.
As a general instruction for this master data, no? So maybe different people are using this. Maybe you can create a program with your name and start tagging everything to that, so that you'll have your own functional role tagging to that program, so that you are not using others functional role for assigning a task. Yeah, which will come as part of an point 4 or point 5 or something, but again, just highlighting.
Yep. So basically, if you're creating a custom master data, that's fine. We mentioned yesterday, use your initials for the master data. What Ravi just mentioned was in terms of uploading your master data is fine, the custom one, if you have your own initials. But then if let's say you need to update something like a functional role matrix, right? Which is say configure the functional role matrix. Since there is one functional role matrix that you'll see, so don't overwrite the functional role matrix that you see. Rather, create a program first, which is in the program master data. So if I go to master data here, and if I search for program, download this particular program master data. Again, you will be in play, not in dev. Please don't make changes on dev. So in program master data, download this master data and add your own name as a program. Okay. And code also can be your name itself. You don't need to upload or update anything else. Owner ID, you can put your username. And then once you've done that, That program will start showing up when you're also uploading the functional role matrix. So when you upload the functional role matrix, if you click on upload for functional role matrix, you will see that there's a program selector here. This is what Ravi mentioned right now. So here, if you uploaded a program that's your own name, you can type in your name here. Let's say Ravi, for example, and then you will find your name if you have a program to your name. And then accordingly, you can select that and upload the functional role matrix. This will be important because then going forward, when you create a process, you can even tag the program to your process and request as well. That we'll discuss when we get to process and requests. If you have questions on what I just mentioned, please ask. Hamza, were you able to upload master data then? I know you were getting an error when you were uploading the file. Was that resolved?
Yes, it was resolved. It was a,
GS. Okay.
yeah, it was a GS related block. Yep.
Okay, super. Okay, so task one is done. Um, Prakash, were you able to upload your custom master data?
No, I didn't get a chance to try this out yet.
So you're doing that right now. Cool.
Yes, if uh, can we speak about like task 4 part?
Sure. Tell me.
So starting with task 4, the user groups. Are we ideally supposed to make our own user groups or use the common one for this practice?
Um, I would say if you can use the common one, if on play you have a common group, you can use that. That should be fine as long as you have some sample users assigned here. So just add yourself to, let's say, if you have a procurement US group,
Mhm.
add yourself to it. If not, you can just go ahead and create a new group as well. That's fine.
Okay. And will there be like any, I don't think it's a major issue, but if a user is present in both,
Mhm.
is there going to
Yeah,
be an
it's not
issue?
a problem. No, no, not a
Yeah.
problem. Right now, from a testing standpoint, if a user is available in both, that's actually good because then if it goes for a review or an approval task, and if it's you that's present in both these groups, then you can
Mm.
actually go ahead and you can approve or action that request as well. So ensure that if there is someone has already created the group, then just go ahead and add yourself to those groups, and then we can use it. It's these are all things that we've given as a reference, but yeah, that that should be fine.
Okay.
Yeah, even I experienced the admin logs out after a few minutes. Like,
Hmm. So I think for admin, it's not something that we have the timeout set up for. I'll check if we can have it set up or is there if there's another setting for it. Not that I'm aware of though.
So Josefa, I think on the filter section perspective, right? I think in the functional role, the region, right? So instead of region, I think if I'm using any other
Yeah, should be
master
fine.
data which is having hierarchy structure in the data.
Hmm.
So if I use a parent level for the filtering, does that mean if any child that is selected for that under that particular parent, will it be directed to the that particular filtering, or will it satisfy the filtering, or the parent level only should be selected for the filtering to happen? Are you able to follow what I'm
Uh,
saying?
Can you share your screen? I did, but I want to ensure that I got it right.
No, I don't have example, but again, I can elaborate this. So, so meaning, I think I consider I have a region where region is having a APAC and then EMEA and US regions, or Americas region. Under that, you
Hmm.
have a all the countries or something, maybe different regions. And so as a two-level hierarchy. And
Hmm.
now, as part of my functional role, if I use APAC as a filtering condition, yeah,
Hmm.
then if anybody having the region selected as India or maybe some APAC child, right? Will it
Hmm.
consider the region the filtering condition satisfied for that particular row in the function role, uh, or or that filter that filter should be selected with only APAC?
It should work with the parent-child relationship as well.
If I configure it as a APAC and if somebody selects India or somebody is having region as India, so they'll be assigned with that row as a task assignment. Is it?
You don't assign it like you don't give a value, right? Like you will give the column name, correct?
No, I think can you share a screen? I think the table that you're having in this on the screen.
Sure.
In this screen, consider US is a first level and EMEA is a second level. Under EMEA, maybe there is another item called APAC. And under EMEA, there are countries, right? Or maybe different splits of the regions, two levels hierarchy. And since I've just put EMEA, and when somebody raises a request with the region as the L1, but not the L0, or maybe L2 are the lowest item, but not a L1, which is EMEA. Since I've configured here as a EMEA, and somebody selected as a United Kingdom or maybe something else at the lowest level, because
No, that's
EMEA
clear.
is formed.
No, no,
Yeah.
1 second. That's clear. I understood
uh,
the problem statement that you're saying. My point is when you are setting up the filter in admin side, you are not defining the field, right? You are defining the columns. If I'm saying region, region can have level one, level two category, right? As you see
uh-huh,
here, right? And
yeah.
then when you are putting the filter in company entity, here you only specify the column name, correct?
uh,
So
mhm,
at a region level, if the user goes ahead and selects United States, like how we were doing on the front door side, it will
mhm.
tag it to the parent category and it will associate or build that relationship. The system is able to do that parent child relationship. Make sense?
Yeah. So which means if somebody selected as a India or maybe any of the child of the parent, if we configure functional role at the parent level, so that functional role will be assigned based on the child as well, because based on child parent child relationship.
How are you relating this to functional role? I am not getting it. Sorry.
Okay. Okay. In this example, right, I think in your table, if you see US and EMEA, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And in the region master data, can you go to master data in the play? Or maybe if I want, I can share my screen. But again, I don't know if I have that kind of a hierarchy.
That's
But
okay.
in dev, you have a hierarchy.
That is just an example that I've taken. So it's okay. Here in region, you already have it at a country level, I assume. Yeah. So
Yeah,
what you
country
see
level.
here is, yeah, what you see here as region is just an example. You can easily replace this at a country level, say procurement US versus procurement, say Germany, for example.
Hmm. Yeah, I can do that at the lowest level. I think it's something I've tested. Maybe as a
And
parent level, if
then
I configure the functional role.
no, yeah. So let's come back to that scenario. Now you're saying that based on that selection, if here at a region level, right, in the
uh,
master data, let's say let's search for region. Yeah, I think business region codes is what you can use. So if you're using business region code here and you're putting the region parent or child, that association system will make. So if you put the parent here and the child is selected at a request level, it will associate that parent and child relationship is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
So I'm trying to complete task 4B, and I think what I see in master data, there are three different functional roles. Is that something that's, I mean, if the name of the master data is the same, is that still allowed?
Yeah, because we discussed, no, that the program is unique for it.
Mm, yes.
So you see on my screen also there are two different functional roles in dev also. That's
Yeah.
because this is phase 0 and this is PH0. So two different programs. And
Yeah.
this
Okay.
is where I mentioned, yeah. So if you are also doing this, just update this program master data in play with like a program that's not a real program, but it's just your name. Code also you can just put your name. That way, when you are uploading the functional role,
Okay.
you select yourself as the program there, so that way you'll have like a new entry, and later on when you create a process and request, you can tag it to that program.
Got it. Oh,
Hmm.
so there is no clash there. Okay, I
No,
understand.
correct. So that we are not like, say you'll upload a functional and somebody else will overwrite it, you don't lose your information because that's essentially the same master data, so we want to avoid that.
I understand.
Can you send the form related tasks or practice, Zaman?
Sure. Let me first share my screen here. So you can go through this. Meanwhile, I'll share you the scenario PDF on email as well. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I have sent the email for forms. I will extend it to the larger group that joins tomorrow. So just on that. For now, you should have it. I think it takes about a minute. I think we have about 2 more minutes.
Quick question, Zafar. So if
Hmm.
let's say if there's a existing functional role master data,
Hmm.
and I download that template to create a new one, a very
Hmm.
similar one with my
Hmm.
personalized naming. So
Hmm.
will I be able to still upload it and run that? Because I think I'm getting a name not found error. So I can maybe share my screen and show you that.
Sure.
Uh, so I have, let me know if you can see.
Yeah, I can.
So what I can see is that upload master data, and I'm typing this name Hamza underscore functional role. I
Hmm.
recently created this, and I'm trying to upload a file which is like this. I
Correct.
have these procurement US and EMEA groups name
Hmm.
already.
Hmm.
And user group ID is derived. I guess like with the name and underscore, just putting
Yeah,
an underscore wherever there's a space, right?
but these groups are created in Play. Did you check?
Yes. So in user and groups.
So
Um,
that's the first bit that, yeah. And the other bit is also that. Okay. Yeah, cool. Now the other bit is when you're adding your name, right, in the master data that you're adding, it's basically ending it up as a custom master data. So what you actually should do is just type in, yeah, you can go to add new, type in functional role. Yeah, select the functional role, the first one that you see, correct? Now here choose a program for your name. Yeah, so
I
you added
added
it.
this. Yeah.
Yeah, now select this. Now browse and upload your file. Yeah, now click on upload.
Understood. Okay.
Hmm. So it's the same file and program automatically creates a copy. Now see search functional role here. It should let you see a functional role tag to Hamza. Yeah,
I
cool.
see. So it's sorry, that was my Siri. So the function role will automatically it's basically wired in a way that
Hmm.
if I'll click on functional role and then it will give me a program ID which I recently created, and then I can upload the
Yeah,
file with its corresponding metadata.
correct. And now when you go to process or task, right, and we'll see this in the upcoming days, you'll see like how at a process level, request level, you can define that, okay, for this process, follow this particular program. And then that way it'll pick the functional role which is created for that program.
Okay.
Mm.
Okay. Okay. Nice. Fine. Thank you.
All right, no problem. Cool. Team, any other questions before we close for the day?
No, nothing from.
Cool. All good. So thank you so much for joining in. We will speak tomorrow. Bye
Yep.
bye.
Thank you,
Thank
Zephyr.
you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Record.